This is Mia Horror Stories, and tonight's story she texted me from her own funeral is told in darkness. The screen will stay black, so you can simply listen, imagine, and feel every moment without distraction. Trust me, the build-up matters, and the ending is where the real chill hides. So don't look away, and don't leave early. My phone buzzed twice. Once was the standard vibration from my pocket. The other was a faint ping, like a single chime from an old music box, quiet, but impossible to ignore. I pulled it out. The screen lit up. The message came from Jess. "I'm here." It was 11:02 a.m., April 12th, and my hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the phone on the hardwood floor. But Jess was dead. They had announced it 3 days ago. The police said it was an accident, but the way the news spread, it felt more like a headline that came too soon for some part of me. My apartment in the East End of Boston felt too warm, even though the window was cracked open, letting in the chill of a late spring morning. The smell of burnt coffee still lingered, a cruel reminder I had barely touched the mug on my desk. I stared at the text. "I'm here." I told myself it was a prank, a wrong number. My phone could be hacked, or someone could be screwing with me. But deep down, I knew that message wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a mistake. I pressed the screen, trying to open the conversation. There was no reply, just that one message. The clock ticked louder than usual. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed in the distance, winding its way between the brick buildings like a restless ghost. The air smelled faintly of rain, though no drops had fallen yet. I sat down, my back against the cracked leather of my worn-out couch. The coffee was cold now, forgotten. I had to make sense of it, but everything felt slippery, like trying to hold water in my palm. That's when my phone buzzed again. The screen showed a different number. I saw her too, at the church. My breath hitched. The funeral was today, a few miles away at St. Augustine. I hadn't planned on going. I didn't want to face the crowd, the forced condolences, the hollow sympathies. Jess was my closest friend for nearly a decade, and somehow the thought of sitting among strangers, pretending to mourn her made my stomach twist. But now I had no choice. I needed answers. I grabbed my coat, the one with fraying cuffs, and slipped my phone into the pocket. The streets outside were busy, people going about their Saturday, unaware of the strange weight pressing on my chest. The church was an old brick building with peeling white paint and a bell tower that looked like it had seen better days. Inside, the smell of lilies and polished wood mixed with the heavy scent of damp coats and perfume. The light was dim, filtering through stained glass windows that cast muted rainbows across the pews. The crowd was a patchwork of people I half recognized, neighbors, co-workers, distant cousins, faces mostly unfamiliar or unreadable. Everyone was quiet, murmuring in low tones, except for a woman sobbing softly near the front. I spotted Jess's parents. They looked smaller than I remembered, as if grief had shrunk them. Her mother clutched a handkerchief, her eyes red-rimmed, while her father stood rigid, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. I moved toward the back, trying to blend in, but my heart hammered. ceremony was about to begin, and somewhere behind the pulpit, I felt eyes watching me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, this time a message from Jess's number. "Look behind you." The hairs on the back of my neck prickled. I turned slowly. There was no one there, but an elderly man with a cane and a woman adjusting a toddler's coat. The funeral mass started, the priest's voice steady but distant, like it was coming through a thick wall. I sat down, gripping my phone in my palm, the screen dark now, waiting for the next move. The last hymn died away. The priest stepped down from the pulpit, eyes sweeping over the congregation with practiced solemnity. I still had the phone pressed to my thigh, heart ticking against my ribs like a warning bell. The funeral was supposed to be the end of it, a final goodbye. But instead, it felt like a beginning somewhere dark, far from the comfort of closure. Then my phone buzzed again. "We don't have much time. Look outside, hurry." The message came from Jess's number again. I glanced around. People were shifting in their seats, some whispering, others wiping eyes. My hands were clammy, the phone slipping in my grip. I turned to Jess's parents, who were staring straight ahead, lost in their grief. A sharp tug on my sleeve made me look down. "Elliot," the voice was low, urgent. It was a woman, a stranger. Mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She glanced nervously around the room. "I'm sorry to bother you," she whispered. "I'm Rachel. I'm connected to Jess. I saw your text. You're not imagining things." My throat tightened. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Rachel's eyes flicked toward the church doors. "She's not really dead." That sentence hit me like a slap. "She's alive?" I asked, voice barely audible. Rachel nodded quickly. "But if she is, someone wants to keep it that way. There's been some weird stuff happening around here." My pulse quickened. I had to believe her, but part of me screamed that this was some sick joke. "I don't understand," I said. "If Jess is alive, why the funeral?" Rachel hesitated. "Because it's the perfect cover. No one expects her to be alive after this." The church felt smaller, suffocating. Somewhere near the back, a child whimpered softly. My phone buzzed again. "Behind the chapel, please." Rachel glanced at my phone, alarm in her eyes. "We have to move now," she said. Outside, the church courtyard was busy with people milling around, some clutching tissues, others exchanging quiet condolences. The air was crisp, carrying the sharp scent of freshly cut grass and distant exhaust fumes. I followed Rachel quickly, dodging a group of elderly ladies in floral hats. My mind raced. Jess's death had left a hole, but Rachel's claim shattered everything I thought I knew. I was scared to believe it, scared to dismiss it. "Wait," I said, slowing down. "How do you know she's alive? What proof do you have?" Rachel bit her lip, scanning the street. "Last night, I saw her, Jess, at a diner near Fenway Park. She looked scared, confused, like she didn't know where to go." I swallowed hard, memories flashing of the last time I saw Jess, her jittery phone calls, vague mentions of threats, and that night she disappeared. Rachel glanced over her shoulder. "There's more. People have been asking questions. Nosy neighbors, some old friends. Someone is watching, and they don't want Jess found. We reached the side of the church. The chapel entrance was locked, but a side door to the courtyard was slightly ajar. Rachel pushed it open. Inside was dim and cold. The air smelled faintly of mildew and old stone. The floor creaked beneath our feet as we moved down a narrow corridor lined with framed photographs of past ceremonies. Suddenly, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the space, then cut out. We were plunged into silence and shadow. I fumbled for my phone to turn on the flashlight, the beam slicing through the darkness. Rachel's breath was quick, uneven. "We need to find her before they do," she whispered. A sharp bang echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. A door slammed shut. I froze. "Did you hear that?" Rachel whispered. "We're not alone," I said, voice tight. We moved cautiously toward the chapel, each step weighted with fear and anticipation. My hands trembled, not just from the cold or darkness, but because I'd never been this close to danger before. A sudden movement in the corner of my eye made me spin around. Nothing, just shadows. Then the phone buzzed again. "They're coming, please hurry." The weight of those words crushed me. We reached a set of double doors leading into the chapel proper. Heavy oak, polished but worn with age. Rachel tried the handle, locked. I rattled the knob, heart pounding. "God, come on," I muttered. From behind, we heard footsteps, fast, deliberate. Rachel's voice was urgent now. "We have to find another way." I looked around. A small window near the floor, partly obscured by a pew. "Help me with this." She crouched, and I pushed the window open. It was tight, but we could slip through. Outside, the church's back garden was quiet. The grass was wet with dew, and a cold breeze stirred the branches of a lone oak tree. Then a flashlight beam cut through the dark. A voice barked from the shadows. "Stop right there." We sprinted across the garden, branches scraping against our faces, hearts hammering in our ears. Rachel stumbled, her ankle twisting sharply on the uneven ground. She cried out, clutching it. I had to decide, keep running or stop and help her. The flashlight beam was getting closer. The cold night air cut through my thin jacket as I half carried, half supported Rachel across the church's back garden. The flashlight beam from behind traced every step, slicing through the dark like a predator's gaze. Her ankle throbbed visibly, and every wince she stifled made my chest tighten. We ducked behind the low stone wall that bordered the garden, trying to catch our breath. The street beyond was quiet, dimly lit by sodium lamps, their orange glow flickering in the breeze. "Where now?" I asked, whispering. Rachel pressed her palm to the ground, eyes scanning the shadows. "There's an alley along Washington Street, a few blocks from here. I think Jess might be hiding in an old warehouse there." The warehouse was a relic of Boston's industrial past, long abandoned, but occasionally used by squatters and drifters. It wasn't exactly a safe bet, but it was the only lead we had. The street was mostly empty, except for a homeless man sitting by a doorway, muttering to himself. We skirted around him, careful not to draw attention. Every step was a battle. Rachel's limp slowed us down, and the dull ache in my calves reminded me how unprepared I was for this kind of chase. As we neared Washington Street, the rhythmic pounding of distant footsteps echoed again. The pursuers weren't giving up. Rachel groaned, and I grabbed her arm. "Hold on, we're almost there." The alley was narrow, flanked by towering brick buildings stained with graffiti and grime. Trash bins overflowed with rotting debris, and the smell of urine and damp concrete hung heavy. Rachel pointed to a side door, rusty but not locked. She tried the handle. It gave way with a creak. Inside, the warehouse was vast and cavernous, swallowed in shadows. The smell of dust and mold filled the air. Broken windows let in shards of moonlight that glinted off puddles on the cracked floor. We moved cautiously. Every creak and drip seemed louder than it should be, the silence pressing against my ears. Suddenly, a noise, metal clanging somewhere deeper in the warehouse. I froze, heart racing. Rachel's eyes darted toward the sound. Maybe it's Jess. We moved toward the noise, the beam from my phone slicing through the darkness. Then a figure leapt out from behind a stack of wooden crates. I gasped, stumbling backward. But it was Jess. It was a stray dog, skinny and mangy, barking fiercely before bounding away into the shadows. Rachel laughed softly, tension breaking for a moment. "That was close," she said. We pressed on, deeper into the warehouse, until we found a makeshift camp, a tattered sleeping bag, empty cans, and a few personal belongings strewn about. "No, Jess." I sank onto an overturned crate, rubbing my face. The weight of exhaustion was settling in, and Rachel's breathing was ragged. My phone buzzed again. "Don't trust Rachel. She's not who she says." I stared at the message, disbelief crashing down. The number was Jess's. "Rachel," I said quietly, "I just got a message saying not to trust you." Her eyes flashed, but she didn't deny it. "Who else knows you're here?" I asked, voice low. She shook her head. "No one, I swear." Before I could press further, a heavy thud echoed behind us. We spun around to see a pair of figures stepping through the broken entrance, flashlights cutting through the dark. "They found us," Rachel hissed. We ducked behind a stack of crates, hearts pounding. I tried to control my breathing, but my chest felt tight. The pursuers moved methodically, sweeping their lights side to side. One paused, shining the beam directly at us. I froze. The flashlight hit a hanging tarp, and it swayed in the draft, nothing more than a piece of old fabric. The pursuers moved on. I exhaled slowly. Rachel leaned against me, voice trembling. "We need another plan." I agreed. We backtracked through the warehouse, trying to find an exit on the other side. Rachel's limp was slowing us down more than ever, and my muscles screamed with fatigue. Outside, the city seemed indifferent, distant car horns, muffled voices, the steady hum of night. We found a side gate leading to an alley behind the warehouse. It was padlocked, but Rachel produced a small pocket knife. I watched nervously as she worked at the lock, sweat beading on her forehead. The gate finally gave way with a soft click. We slipped through, relief flooding me. But the relief was short-lived. Across the alley, a black van idled with its engine running, lights off, but windows tinted. From inside, a shadowy figure watched us. Rachel grabbed my arm. "They're waiting." We had nowhere left to run. The black van waited like a predator in the narrow alley, its dark windows reflecting the dim streetlights like glossy eyes. Rachel's grip on my arm tightened so hard it stung, her face pale under the flickering glow. "We can't stay here," she whispered. I nodded, heart hammering. The adrenaline was sharp, raw, but underneath it all, my muscles screamed with exhaustion. Every breath was ragged. The van door slid open with a hiss. Two men stepped out, tall, bulky, faces obscured beneath baseball caps. They moved fast, silent as shadows. No time for hesitation. I glanced around. The alley was a dead end, brick walls on either side, trash bins, and the locked gate we just passed through. The only option was back the way we came. "Run," I shouted, pulling Rachel forward. Her limp was more pronounced now, pain etched in every step. The men gave chase, voices low but sharp. "Stop them," one barked. We sprinted toward the warehouse entrance, the cold concrete biting into my palms as I pushed the door open and dragged Rachel inside. The familiar cavernous darkness swallowed us whole. I fumbled for my phone, flashlight on, scanning the shadows. The sound of boots echoed behind us. "We need to hide," Rachel gasped, clutching her ankle. There was an old office space to the left, a small room with broken windows and dusty furniture. We slipped inside and slammed the door. My fingers shook as I locked it. Outside, footsteps paced, then stopped. Suddenly, the door handle rattled. One of the men was trying to force it open. I looked at Rachel. She was pale, sweat beading on her forehead. "Any idea where Jess might be?" I asked, voice low but urgent. Rachel shook her head. "No, she vanished after I last saw her. But whoever these men are, they're connected to why she's in hiding." The handle rattled again. I peeked through the cracked window. The men were searching the hallway, flashing their lights, calling out. Then a sudden realization hit me. The old electrical panel was on the wall opposite the door, an exposed mess of switches and wires. If I could cut the power, it might buy us time. I slipped out of the office while Rachel covered her eyes. The warehouse plunged into total darkness. "Shit," one of the men shouted. I heard hurried footsteps retreating. Back in the room, Rachel was breathing hard. "Good thinking," she said. But relief was short-lived. My phone buzzed. Another message from Jess. "Trust no one. Meet me at the pier. Midnight." Rachel's eyes widened. "Midnight, only an hour away," she said. "If we wait too long, they'll find you." We had no choice. I helped Rachel to her feet, supporting her as we left the office. The warehouse felt like a tomb, without power, cold, silent except for our footsteps. Outside, the night air hit like a wall. The pier was a 15-minute walk along the harbor, past dark warehouses and empty docks. I kept glancing over my shoulder, paranoia clawing at me. Near the pier, a stray cat darted from the shadows, its eyes glowing. My heart jumped, but it was just a cat. At the pier entrance, the cold salt breeze stung my face. We saw Jess standing there. She looked thin, worn, but alive. Her eyes held something fierce: fear, defiance, exhaustion. "Elliot," she said softly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I had to disappear." Before I could respond, headlights blazed behind us. The black van screeched to a halt at the pier's edge. The two men jumped out, guns drawn. "Stay back," one shouted. I shoved Rachel behind me. Jess stepped forward. "I'm not going back," she said, voice steady. The men advanced. I looked at Rachel, who nodded weakly. There was no way out. Suddenly, a scuffle. One man lunged at Jess. I grabbed a rusted metal pipe from nearby and swung hard. It connected with a sickening crack. The man dropped. The other fired a shot into the air. "Enough," he shouted. Jess grabbed Rachel's hand. "We run now," she said. We bolted toward the pier's end, the water dark and deep beneath us. The men shouted curses, but they didn't follow. We collapsed on the wooden planks, breaths ragged, bodies trembling. Rachel's ankle bloodied, but she was alive. Jess looked at me, eyes glistening. "Thank you," she said. But the danger wasn't over. We were exposed, vulnerable, and hunted. And as the distant sirens grew louder, I knew the cost of this night wasn't just pain or fear. It was the fracture in trust, the weight of secrets, and the knowledge that freedom would always be fragile. The ambulance smelled of antiseptic and something faintly sweet, like burnt sugar. Rachel was in the back, her ankle swaddled awkwardly in a splint. Jess sat beside her, quiet, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. I rode up front with the paramedic, trying to steady my breathing. My hands were still shaking, and the ache in my chest hadn't eased. The cold from the pier had seeped into my bones. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow that seemed both too bright and too cold. Rachel was admitted for observation, and they insisted Jess stay for questioning. I sat in the waiting area, alone with my thoughts, replaying the last 24 hours like a broken record. Jess had vanished without a trace. That wasn't a metaphor. She had literally slipped away from everyone she knew and trusted, including me. The truth, when it came, was a mess of fear and threats tied to a company. She'd worked for something involving whistleblowing, surveillance, and a web of lies that stretched far beyond our city. Her death, the funeral, even the texts, they were all part of a plan to protect her from enemies who would go to great lengths to keep their secrets. Rachel, I learned later, had been sent to keep tabs on Jess, maybe even mislead anyone who got too close. She wasn't a friend, but not exactly an enemy either, more like a reluctant participant caught in the middle. That warning message on my phone, it wasn't to protect me, but to sow confusion, to make sure I was off balance. I felt used, angry, but mostly exhausted. The police questioned us extensively. Nothing came of it immediately. The pursuers vanished as quietly as they appeared. Jess, Rachel, and I were left to pick up the pieces in our separate ways. Weeks later, I found myself back in my apartment. The windows were open, and the spring air was warmer now, but the scent of that cold April morning still lingered somewhere beneath the surface, like the faint smell of coffee, burnt but not gone. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. You're safer now, but watch the shadows. No signature, no reply. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming.